friends and family. A month ago, I asked you all, what games do you play so that you don't feel so alone? I actually even did my own video. I talked about MMO to play if you happen to be alone. And I kind of started, a rampage talking about games to play to make friends. And I'm going to continue to do that. Or games to play so that you can socialize. Or games to play that, yeah, they're fun with friends. But some people are alone and you don't want to feel so alone. And this is going to be a list video brought to you by you, actually. This is your responses, and I think that they're pretty telling, and I think we can extrapolate some of this data and maybe help each other find new games so that we can play together, or at the very least, maybe not be so alone. So I wanted to jump into it, and firstly, and very obviously, we actually have a lot of people recommending games like Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 is an MMORPG, and many people would say the MMORPG genre is a great genre to play with friends, and I somewhat disagreed, actually, with a recent video. Maybe not so much bringing friends into the MMO, but a game to make friends, a game to jump in and play alone or solo, but not entirely alone, where there's, you're surrounded by people, there's major cities, there's queuing for dungeons, there's group content, and yet there's this ability to live in the world, by yourself, but you're never really all by yourself, and you have sort of choices of, do you want to do the group content? Do you want to talk to anybody? Maybe you could even jump into a game such as Guild Wars 2 and just play around with the chat, just ask some people some questions like, oh, did you guys watch the new, Squid Game? Was it fun? Stuff like that. But Guild Wars 2 especially, I think, fosters that environment. I can see why a lot of people definitely recommended it, a game to not feel alone, because it has dynamic questing. You don't have too much weight or severity with queuing up with people. It's very easy to matchmake or jump into dungeon queues, and overall there isn't really too much anxiousness, and most people who play MMOs are introverts, and I definitely feel that tug backwards whenever it's like, yeah, I want to do raids and I want to join guilds, but like, I gotta actually talk to people and put myself out there. Guild Wars 2 makes it really easy just to jump around, literally, with jumping puzzles, or do the solo questing campaign, or maybe if I do want to co-op, maybe I do want to do some dungeons, go here, go there, and I really don't ever feel alone. Guild Wars 2 is one of the most social games. And secondarily, in the MMORPG genre, the next game that was recommended was actually Elder Scrolls Online. Elder Scrolls Online is a game that works inversely, I think, to Guild Wars 2. Now, Guild Wars 2 is really open and dynamic and everything. Elder Scrolls Online has those features kind of too. They're very much an emulation of GW2. But mostly, it's just really fun to play single player. Honestly, Elder Scrolls Online in its current state is totally an Elder Scrolls game, and I personally play it off stream, and I don't make too many videos on it because it's sort of my late night and chill game that I want to play alone. This is my experience and my story, and I really appreciate it. But bonus points though is that I don't feel alone doing the single player kind of content, and with all the NPCs, the dialogue, the voicing, the world feels rich already. But then on top of that, you do have other players running around the world, you do have these open world events, and you can even collaborate with a lot of the quests, which are designed, I think, fittingly to work in a random open world. And so much co-op though? No, same with Guild Wars 2. It's a little awkward, a little clumsy, but games to just jump in if you are alone, to not feel alone. At least these two MMORPGs do a great job, and I do think the genre as a whole is a pretty good space for that. But next, secondarily recommended, is actually, just in general, probably horror games, funny enough. Yeah, Resident Evil 2 was at the top of the list, as well as The Forest, but we'll talk about Resident Evil 2, really, because it's not a multiplayer game. It's not. And I imagine a lot of people play games to not feel alone. Probably similarly would be titles like Metroid games, or the games like Dark Souls. But Resident Evil 2 is singularly single player, and it is a horrific game, and it is not that abundant like Elder Scrolls Online with NPCs or characters. But the idea is that sometimes when you feel lonely, it doesn't mean you are alone. You can be in a mall or in school or just, in your home with your family, and you can be completely lonely. Very famous quote attributed by Robin Williams, basically surmised to say that. And yeah, okay, so it just got a little bit sad, but basically these kind of games, horror games, I think add an artificial and fantastic tension and anxiety and horror that kind of makes you forget about the loneliness, or maybe even the loneliness helps to enrich the gameplay. And then you have games like The Forest, where you can also have that experience, but then also be collaborative and cooperative. So I really appreciate survival games for that. So for me, I think my champion for games to play to not feel alone would be probably online survival games where you can jump in. Games like Don't Starve, actually, even though most of the time you are playing alone. Yeah, sure, like The Forest. If you can go in Discord and jump in with a random maybe, or bring in a friend, sure. These kind of games, they won't make you feel alone because, you know, you always have this horror encroaching on you. But especially, yeah, games like The Forest, where you can play with another player. I think I would personally champion those games, especially if they are online survival games. Like 7 Days to Die is one that I would love to talk about so much more on the channel. It is a great game that does have that social atmosphere, but at the same time, you also don't need it. Something that I slightly mentioned with Elder Scrolls Online. So yeah, horror games and even single-player games can be played to make you not feel alone, apparently. And then lastly, we actually have the genre action RPGs. Yeah. So that's going to be obviously and very clearly Path of Exile was recommended so much. Path of Exile is a game that really is also very single player. However, the writing is Shakespearean. It's poetic. It's really good writing, and there are a lot of characters actually for a grim dark action RPG. But you are going to be spending a lot of time alone, but at the same time there's so many enemies on the screen. There is such this like addictive factor to it where you do sort of forget about your troubles of the world. Now, to make you not feel alone, maybe I think a game like that could, just like we mentioned a little bit with other horror games like Resident Evil, or even, you know, I guess Elder Scrolls Online and Guild Wars 2 have that sort of stimulation. But specifically action RPG like Diablo or mainly Path of Exile, I think have this addictive nature to it. But bonus points for Path of Exile for the hub towns having players, for the ability to cooperate if you want to, and for the trading scene as well. There is also this community, like I wanted to say overworld community, where yeah, you can go on Reddit or you can go on YouTube, and there's just a lot of people who are kind of collaborating or creating content together, and that really shouldn't be taken lightly, even for single player games. Oftentimes, like when I played Pokemon Snap or like Nintendo games, but Breath of the Wild, I almost felt like I was playing an MMO, even though I was playing totally alone in a total single player game. Actually, because of the community at large, the meta experience, I felt like I wasn't really playing this alone. I know, weird, right? And a game that I would also champion here is it's an MMO, but it fits in the action RPG genre as well, is Black Desert Online. It's a game that I put as one of the better single-player MMOs, but also it's a really good game to just play because there's so much breadth built into the world. Similar to Elder Scrolls Online, where there's just lots of NPCs around, Black Desert Online just has like a lot of NPCs, and they roam around the world, and you see players pretty frequently just kind of grinding it out, running around as well. And for some reason, Black Desert Online's world, even if it was offline, would feel rich and alive. So even though you sparingly or just very rarely are cooperating or competing with other players, just like Path of Exile, it really is just the nature of that collaboration or cooperation. It is the nature of when you do actually, like, you know, from your own volition, go out and play. And I just think these are the kind of games that are great for introverts, where it's like, okay, at your own pace, play alone if you want to, you won't feel alone, but whenever you really want to, you know, dive into the community and play with them and collaborate, you also have that possibility too. So I can definitely see why a lot of people are recommending games like that. So otherwise, guys, I think I will have to end the video here because those were the games that were recommended. My channel is not very large and YouTube really hates me. I don't know if you guys can see how random my views are, but I would like to get it to 100,000 subscribers and build this community so that we can all play together and maybe do game invasions and stuff like that. But all I can do is recommend games in the future, you know, games that are fun to play, you know, so you don't feel alone. Free games, MMO games, competitive games, what have you, games to play with your friends. I can continue doing that, and if you guys want to see those videos and maybe even help me make those, play with me, collaborate with me, play with me on stream, you know, join my Discord, links in the description, then yeah, I think we're all gonna have a lot of fun. So make sure you like and subscribe to know when I go live. And I just wanted to actually say that we're gonna play a lot of horror games this month, so happy Halloween, everyone, and much love. My name's Skylent, thanks for joining the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.